Welcome to the Vikings Now. I'm your host, Patrick Seatman, and on today's show, we will look at what a perfect Minnesota Vikings 2023 NFL draft would look like. Vikings obviously have very limited picks in this upcoming draft, so they got to be very strategic, and they really got to hit positions of need. BPA, they got to get it all. But like I said, Vikings, they only have 5 picks, and they only have 2 picks in the top 100. They got the 23rd overall pick, obviously in round 1. They got that round 3 pick at 87th. They got round 4 at 119. And then they got the 5th round pick at 159. And then they do have a 6th round pick at 211th. And I just want to say this before we get into it. How weird is it that the Minnesota Vikings don't have a 7th round pick this year? It's kind of a joke between Vikings fans that Rick Spielman, our former GM, he would just haul and hound 7th round picks. I just thought it was pretty interesting that this year, first time in a while, Vikes don't have a 7th round pick. But in round 1, I got the Minnesota Vikings selecting Deonte Banks, the cornerback out of Maryland. Guys, let me tell you something. I absolutely love this guy. He's 6'1", 200 pounds. He's very experienced in a variety of coverage. At Maryland, whether it's cover 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever it may be, press man, he played it all, and his lower body is very fluid. He's a very fluid runner. He's a very, very high up there kind of cornerback prospect. And look at what he did at the Combine this past season. He ran a 4.35 40-yard dash, and the 10-yard split during that 40-yard dash was a 1.49, and he had a 42-inch vertical jump with an 11.4 broad. So this is a 6'1" corner with a 42-inch vert and runs a 4.3. I love this guy, and his stats and coverage this past season were fantastic. When teams are targeting him, he only let up 43.3% of completions on him. He had 8 pass breakups, 1 interception. He did allow 4 touchdowns, but again, it was on very limited throws his way. As Deonte Banks, he was a great player for the Maryland Terrapins this past season. And hey, if we're looking at this Vikings depth chart right now, the Vikings going to need to draft somebody in this draft. I mean, Byron Murphy, great pickup. I like him. Is he a true cornerback 1 in this league? Probably not. He's probably more of a cornerback 2. Caleb Evans and Andrew Booth Jr. Last year's draft picks in the 2nd and 3rd round who are going to be entering year 2. They dealt with injuries last year. Still huge question marks on both of them. But right now the Vikings only have 5 players on their roster that could potentially play corner for them. So overall, my take on this is the Vikings need to draft a corner in round 1. I understand that I would love to go BPA. Obviously, every team wants to go BPA in the draft. But for the Vikings, with how weak this cornerback room is right now, I think you have to go corner round 1. Because, hey, I am a fan of Byron Murphy, but I would be even bigger of a fan of him if he was a corner 2, and we could potentially get a franchise corner like a Deonte Banks at that 23rd overall spot. I've seen Deonte Banks mocked in from probably pick 17 through like 27. So it's really going to have to come down to if other teams don't take Deonte Banks. And if he's there at 23, I'm taking him at 23. But I want to ask you guys this in the comments section. Would you draft Deonte Banks at 23 overall? If you would take him, give me a D for draft. If you would pass on him, just give me a P for pass. This is going to be the pinned comment on today's video. So it's going to be just right down there in the YouTube comment section. If you guys get hit with a YouTube ad break right now, they always throw YouTube ads right around this time. Just let it play. Go answer today's pinned comment. So round 3, pick 87 overall in this year's draft. I got the Vikings selecting Kobie Turner, the defensive lineman out of Wake Forest. He's a big boy, man. He's 6'3", just under 300 pounds, and he's got an excellent feel for working off blockers, and he's a technician with a high motor. That's what the scouts from the scouting combine, that's kind of the biggest takeaway with him, is that high motor that he has. If we're looking at some of his strengths, he's got a very impressive get off, man. He is very quick on that line of scrimmage. He's very fast. When that ball is snapped, he's getting off it very well. And then he's got a good pad level in terms of getting leverage on his blocks. He for a bigger dude at 6'3", 290, he can get low, and he's got pretty good pad level. And then, like I said, he frees up linebackers very well. He's a man in the middle that's just going to eat blockers, and I've always compared it. Offensive line to running backs is the same thing as defensive line two linebackers, and he gets solid extension with his arms. He's actually got pretty long arms. He's really extend out and move off blockers very well, and I think he would fit in very well with this defensive line unit for the Minnesota Vikings. Right now, the Vikings really with Dean Lowry, Kyrus Tonga, and Harrison Phillips. Besides corner, this is probably the second biggest position to need for the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, obviously bringing in Dean Lowry this past season, that's a big-time get for the Minnesota Vikings, taking him from the Green Bay Packers. But we're still kind of lacking that true interior defensive lineman. I think Kobie Turner would fit that very, very well. Now round 4 at pick 119 for the Minnesota Vikings. I got them taking, you guys are going to like this guy, Ivan Pace Jr., the Cincinnati linebacker. He's a big-time hitter. He's elite against the run. I had to put it in all caps right there. He hits hard. He's a hitter. He's going to make you feel it. He's going to make the other team's running back feel it. He's fast. He's explosive. I'm a big fan of Ivan Pace Jr. Plus the Vikings, man, they're going to need to draft another linebacker because, hey, Jordan Hicks, Vikings decided to bring him back. I thought he would have been for sure cut by the Minnesota Vikings. But for some reason, they decided to bring him back. Troy Dye, he's not really going to get any playing time. But Brian Asamoah, he's kind of my little hidden gem on this Vikings roster. A third-round pick from Oklahoma last year. One of the fastest linebackers in the NFL. And I will say, if you would pair up Asamoah and Ivan Pace Jr., I think they would absolutely flourish together. Because what Ivan Pace does well, being that hard hitter, he's not as fast as a guy like Brian Asamoah is. But, man, is he a hard hitter, and he's great against the run. Getting him in the 4th round, that's why I say it's kind of this dream draft scenario to me. I think it would be absolutely fantastic. Him, Brian Asamoah, they would be great together. And I think under the Brian Flores defense of being versatile, being very aggressive, those two could have big seasons in Minnesota. But I ask you guys this, what do you guys think is the biggest need for the Minnesota Vikings heading into the NFL draft? Personally, I think it's still cornerback, but I could see people going linebacker, and I could see people potentially going defensive line. But while you're also down there answering that question on what the Vikings' biggest need is, hit that subscribe button. It's a free way to help our channel out here at Vikings Now. It's free right below there. There's the link at Vikings Today. Just go down there and hit that subscribe button. It helps me out and helps me look good for my bosses. Now at round 5, pick 158. The Vikings select West Virginia wide receiver Bryce Ford-Wheaton. Guys, I'm like trying to contain the smile on my face right now because this is one of my favorite prospects in this year's NFL draft. He's 6'4", 221 pounds. And guys, just go throw on his highlights on YouTube, man. He is fantastic. He's got this big frame, massive wingspan. He's a jump ball specialist. He's probably my favorite day 3 pick in this upcoming year's draft because, man, look at what he did at the Combine. That 40-yard dash coming in at 4.38. The 10-yard split on that 40 at 1.54. He's got a 41-inch vertical. The 3-and-cone drill, that's his weakness, at 6.97. But, man, he is an explosive, big-time play receiver. Looking at his stats here at West Virginia, it's not going to blow you away. I mean, just under 700 yards, 10.9 yards per catch, and 7 touchdowns. This is not a guy that's going to really blow you out the water production-wise. But it's that potential. It's that 6'4", 220-pound frame that runs a 4.38. This guy excites me. Again, he's my favorite day 3 pick for the Minnesota Vikings, and I don't think he would have to come in and play right away because of guys like KJ Osborne, because of guys like Jalen Nailor, Justin Jefferson. He can maybe wait a little bit and develop into a true wide receiver 1 for the or wide receiver 2 for the Minnesota Vikings next to Justin Jefferson. And hey, even if you take him in round 5, he ends up being a very solid wide receiver 3 for the Vikes for years to come. To me, that's a huge win to me. I would love if the Vikes took Bryce Ford-Wheaton in round 5. And now in round 6, got to bring home the hometown kid, Mohamed Ibrahim, the running back out of Minnesota, 5'8", 203 pounds, and he's dealt with injuries throughout his college career. And I know a lot of Vikings fans would love to bring this guy to Minnesota, but man, he hits like a hammer when he runs. Again, he's one of those guys, you throw in his highlights at college, you really can't believe that he is going to be available in round 6. He is 25 years old, so again, I'm not really sure if the Vikings would want to take a 25-year-old running back that's dealt with injuries, but look at his production this past year. 320 carries, just under 1,700 yards, 5.2 yards per carry, 20 touchdowns on the season last year. And I do remember that Ohio State game from I think 2 years ago when he was dominating in week 1. And then he obviously ended up tearing his ACL that year. But I do think he's a great bang for your buck prospect. I think you would be taking him late day 3. And yes, he is 25 years old. He probably won't be getting that second contract in the NFL just because running backs, they kind of tap out at that 28, 29, 30-year-old range. So you would get him on his rookie deal. Again, this would kind of have to come down to if the Vikings do end up moving off a guy like Dalvin Cook, which I still expect them to do before the start of next season. I will be shocked if Dalvin's wearing that purple and gold for the Vikings next year. But pair him up with Alexander Mattison and a Ty Chandler and a Kene Wangu. I mean, you would have two guys in Mattison and Ibrahim that are really strong power backs with two guys that are really versatile, really fast, really explosive, and guys like Ty Chandler and Kene Wangu. But that's my dream Vikings NFL draft. I think those 5 players would be absolutely fantastic for the Minnesota Vikings. I think it would be a dream for me because it really would turn around this defense. But if you guys made it to the end of today's video, hit that subscribe button. Show us some love here on Vikings Now by Chat Sports. I really do appreciate it. And hey, as always, Skol Vikes.